Oh my God, this is terrible. Why did I decide to go through the bumpiest part of downtown in the stiffest suspension setting? Oh man, please, God.
Have you ever gone out on a ride on your Sportster and felt like this?
I broke my back. My back is broken.
What, a vertebrae or what portion?
Spinal.
Well, more than likely you haven't adjusted your suspension settings for your weight and style of riding. Today, we're gonna go over a few different factory settings for the suspension, show you how to do them, and then take this thing downtown through the city, through all the potholes and all the fun little divots in the road, and see how each of those suspension settings affects the actual handling. Stick around to the end. I'll tell you my preferred suspension settings and how I get around on this thing. Today, we're gonna start right here in the garage. But don't worry, we're not gonna be here for long. The point is to get out and ride. I just gotta talk to you guys about a few things. So I don't know how the suspension on this thing is actually set up. It's been pretty close since I got it to the point where I haven't messed with it, but let's take it back to the factory setting so I know where everything is and we can adjust from there. So this is where we adjust the front compression, rebound, and preload. It's a little bit different on this bike than it is on sport bikes, but for this bike, these two little hexagons right here is where we adjust the front preload. Clutch side fork is where we adjust the rebound. Throttle side fork is where we adjust the compression. We only need two basic tools to do this job: a long flathead screwdriver and a 19mm or 3/4. For those of you that don't know, that's the same size. Now for the back, it'll be very difficult to show just because there's not a lot of space, but preload is actually this dial knob right here. Most of you have seen it. Harley made a big deal about it. It is easy to reach. So right here, boom, make your preload adjustment. Pop this side cover off. There's 3 tabs, 1 at the top, 2 at the bottom. Be careful, make sure not to break it. But if you pull it straight out, it comes off just like this. Now, this is where I cannot show, but I will place the screwdriver so you guys can actually see. Right here, just behind this frame, if you actually peek behind the wiring, you can stick a long enough flathead screwdriver in there to see the adjustment knob. It looks identical to the ones in the front. It's a little circle for a flathead screwdriver. You can see it, I can't get in there with the camera. I'll see how I can get a picture, but that's it. It's right there, long screwdriver, we'll actually reach it. It's just, I can't show you with the camera. Preload on this knob right here, compression up top, rebound is at the bottom. You can actually get to it right underneath the swing arm, kind of over the belt. I happen to have this bag in the way, so it's a little bit more difficult for me, but realistically, you should have open access to this right here, and you can actually see it right at the bottom of the shock. A little side note before we get to adjusting here. Preload is set to fully soft, and you stiffen from the softest setting. Compression and rebound are stiffened and actually reduced from the stiffest setting. So they are backwards. Also on this bike, and this is different for every bike, rear preload is adjusted in clicks. As you click that knob every half turn, it gives you a little clicking sensation. You're counting clicks. Everything else is counted by full turns. No clicks, sorry, can't be that easy. First thing we're gonna do, look in the manual, find out what the preload settings are for your weight, as that is very, very different for each person. Also, it's different if you're riding 2-up and have luggage, which hopefully none of you have luggage on this bike. An excessive amount of luggage, right? I am going to add the preload settings right here for you guys to look at and refer to. I obviously have them on paper right here, but this is what you guys are gonna adjust your preload settings to based on weight. This is directly out of the owner's manual. I weigh 190 pounds, 190 to 210. We are looking at 11 clicks from fully soft. So the first thing that we need to do is turn this thing counterclockwise until the suspension is fully soft. The knob here says low, we're turning it counterclockwise, so against the clock, pulling it backwards. I don't know if it's gonna look backwards when I'm doing this, but either way, all the way until it cannot go no more. Also, side note for you guys, all of this stuff is gonna be finger tight. You should not have to put any force behind it, you will break it. If it doesn't move very, very lightly, just 2-finger pressure, especially the small screws on the front adjustment, you will break it. Make sure that you're moving it very soft and being gentle with these things. Do not force them, you will break them. Just saying. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And that's a hard stop. So mine was 20 clicks out, which is set up for somebody that's a little heavier than me, probably an extra 40 pounds. So I'm actually gonna turn it back in 11 clicks, which is what Harley says is good for me, for my height and weight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Boom, 11 clicks. That's what they say, that's what we're gonna try. Now, for the fronts, should be 9 full turns from minimum. Again, we're gonna loosen it up all the way, tighten it back up. 9 turns should be the setting for my weight. The front being a little different than the rear, that's how it should be for your height and weight. Preload is adjusted on each individual fork. Very important note. Both of these have to be at the same exact setting. If one is stiffer than the other, it will cause the suspension to do this unevenly. It will cause a death wobble, and yeah, that's not fun. So make sure that when you're adjusting the big hex screw, 3/4, 19 millimeters, they are both set to the same settings. Now, compression and rebound will be different, but the big hex screw on the outside needs to be the same on both sides. So we're gonna go ahead, loosen it all the way. Preload, counterclockwise, then stiffen it up. 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5, 7, 7.5, 8, 8.5, 9, 9.5, 10, 10.5, 11, 11.5, 12, 12.5, 13, 13.5, 14, 14.5, 15, 15.5, 16. And we've hit the final stop. So this only goes 15 turns, and 16.5, obviously some play because I wasn't being accurate, I'm just loosening it up. This was literally full stiff on the front end, which is set up for somebody that is up to 130 to 190 pounds, which is, it's not me. I'm gonna say it again. Be very gentle with this stuff. Do not force it. You will break it and damage the valving. Way more expensive than just leaving it alone. All right, so 9 turns out. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Also, if you guys were curious, there are some markings on here. I was using this S, and every time it passed this side, I was counting 1. So that was my reference to count all the way around and make sure that it ended up in the same place that it started 9 turns later. Now, same thing, other side. 9. Now, we're done with this. Now to the screwdriver. Some of you may ask, why am I wearing a Honda hat while working on my Harley? Well, it bothers some people, and I think that's funny. That's all. Harley has 3 standard settings for the preload on both the front and the rear. Comfort, Standard, Sport. The front settings for Comfort are, which is where we're gonna start. I'm gonna set it to Comfort, we're gonna go on a ride, set it to Standard, go on another ride, set it to Sport, go on another ride, and I'll talk to you guys about the differences in each and which ones I think is best for you and what type of riding you're doing. So, very soft settings, we're gonna go with Comfort first. So now we're talking compression and rebound damping for the front. Remember, now we're not talking clicks, we're talking turns, and set it to stiff all the way clockwise or in the H direction as it says on the forks itself, and then turn it backwards to the settings that I talked about before. So right now, we're actually gonna take these and turn them until full hard, very light finger turns so you don't break it. If it's hard to turn, you probably reach the end. Don't force it, literally finger turns. Let's get these fully stiff. Turns out these are fully stiff. Fully stiff. So comfort settings, again, clutch side is rebound, throttle side is compression. 3 turns out on each is the comfort setting. So take the screwdriver, there's a nice little dot on the compression and rebound adjusters where you can actually see the dot and you can see how many turns you're making. So 3 turns all the way out, there's a little dot for marking it, so it makes it nice and easy. 3 turns out in the front, we are now fully soft. Comfort settings for the back, which you will not be able to see, is very similar. We are looking at 2 3/4 turns or 2.75 turns on the top and 3 turns on the bottom for the comfort setting. Same thing applies. Turn it clockwise, all the way stiff, loosen it up, these amount of turns. And again, we're messing with turns, we're not actually messing with clicks. These do not click. Nice and soft with the fingers. Seriously, don't break your shit. So my camera decided it wanted to overheat, but either way, I went ahead, made the adjustments. 3 turns out at the bottom, turn it clockwise all the way until it's stiff, 3 turns out, turn it clockwise all the way until it seats, 2 3/4 turns out on the top. Rebound, compression.
Oh yeah, there it is. Good old downtown Jacksonville. Jaguar Stadium right there. Here we go. All right, so here we are. downtown Jacksonville on the Sportster S in the comfort settings, hitting all the bumps, all the slow speed stuff. That's a little bit of a ride for me to get out here, so I've already had a little bit of experience on going fast on the highway, and comparatively speaking to the settings that it had, which were fairly stiff, the comfort setting's actually pretty interesting. That building's gonna get rebuilt. Nice little apartments. They're doing a lot of construction here downtown. I don't know if any of you guys care about that, but this area where we are, there's gonna be a lot of projects. So one thing that I can tell you is getting on the power and getting on the brakes, the suspension moves a lot more than it did in the comfort setting. It dives more, and when you give it throttle, you can feel the bike sit a little bit more, and it actually uses its suspension travel. Whereas in the stiffer setting that it was before, it didn't feel like it used the suspension travel. Now it does. Like right here, I can actually feel the suspension oscillate a little bit. Don't get me wrong, it's still not a bunch of travel, but it oscillates. And that's the course house in case you do anything stupid. Whee! Yeah, I actually feel it. I feel it moving, man. Like I can actually tell now that the bike is moving. And it was also set for somebody that's about 40 pounds heavier than I am, which makes a huge difference. And this bike at slow speed, it handles everything pretty well for the most part. Obviously, we're not going very fast, but it handles it. It actually feels a lot better. If you're definitely into the softer rides, oh man, they even built like a whole little new street. There used to be a park. It's gonna be a more badass park now, but there's gonna be a building to it. Ooh, they broke it. Our good friend Mr. Jackson. Honestly, even over all of these bumps, it actually eats up a lot of this crap, man. Whereas before, you could hear my voice kind of like, now it doesn't do that. Yeah, it's interesting. I can feel the front end, I can feel the back end squat a lot more with the comfort settings. I think it would be for sure highway trip, longer trip worthy to be in the comfort settings, 100%. Let's go in front of the freaking Hyatt here. Since we're over here, why not, right? We can't go that way because it's closed. Or can we? We can go this way to the parking lot. We're definitely paying for parking. You guys just didn't see it.
So now let's adjust this rear from comfort to standard. The top stays 2 3/4 turns out exactly how it is. And this bottom one now goes from 3 turns out to 1.75. So 1 3/4 turns. So we have to turn it in 1 1/4 turns for the standard settings in the front. So comfort, 3 turns out, 3 turns out. We're done with that. We're going to standard now. Standard compression is no turns out. So the compression is fully stiff, and we have 2 turns out on the rebound. So we're gonna go ahead and bring this in 1 turn, and we're gonna go ahead and bring this in 3 turns or back to the stiffest settings.
All right, so here we go. Standard settings in front of the Hyatt Regency next to this pointy thing. We're gonna go ahead and head towards the stadium. I don't know what the heck they're doing. First thing I notice in the standard settings immediately is the suspension moves significantly less. Like, duh, it's supposed to, but I feel the bumps a lot more. The bike seems to not squat as much when you're on power, and it dives less when you're on the brakes. Hey, look, there's an officer doing a U-turn in front of me. We're not gonna go fast. So essentially, it feels like the lower portion of the suspension travel is not being reached, really. On the soft setting, it feels like it goes all the way down. It doesn't bottom out, but it goes all the way down. And if you're a heavier rider, I could see it bottoming out. But right here on the standard settings, the trip back up is fairly the same. It's not like it's really stiff and kind of pogos you, but the suspension doesn't sit as much. It takes a lot bigger of a bump to get it deep in the suspension, which is not bad on medium-ish roads. And if you're more of an aggressive rider, I would say this is probably better because the bike doesn't, like this, whee, boom, I came off the seat. It's not bad. It caught me, it didn't bother me, it didn't hurt me in any way, shape, or form, but I came off the seat. But as I was saying, This is probably literally the standard, like the medium setting is perfectly fine. It is halfway decent when it comes to actual softness. It still has some level of compliance, but definitely not as much. Ed, welcome to the Jack Stadium, by the way. This road's nice and smooth. Like for roads like this, it is perfectly fine. There is nothing, there is no drama caused here. So let's get back to downtown where we got some bumps. Interesting. Yeah, this setting also feels like it can sit sideways on the tire a lot better. The first setting, the comfort setting, listen, I'm not gonna say it was scary, but it felt a little soft for taking turns. This right here feels a lot more planted in the turn environment. And at speed, we're going 65 right here. I'm starting to feel it. I'm starting to feel the suspension in the seat a little bit, so it's not too stiff right here. But it is definitely more of a spirited ride setting, if I'm being honest with you. All of these bumps, there's little connectors here. It's kind of I don't feel most of them. It's absorbing the grand majority of them, being honest. Also, let's turn right here and let's go to the jail. Overall, not bad, not too shabby. I would say this is probably the standard setting, literally what the bike comes in. So on gigantic bumps, it will absorb them. Really, really big bumps. Not stiff ones like that pothole right there where it's kind of just like a quick abrupt stop. The quick bumps, you will feel. The longer travel bumps, you will... How can I go straight but not turn? That makes no sense. That's the jail. Like literally right downtown. Jacksonville is a weird place. Anybody come in, anybody come in, and they're way over there. All right, back this way. Whee! So yeah, all the stiff, the really quick stiff bumps, yeah, this one's it's gonna transmit it through, you're gonna feel it. However, on long sweepers and on the side of the tire where you actually need the suspension to sit, it will actually let it. It just takes more time. So on bigger bumps like speed bumps and random things like that, it'll eat all that stuff up. On the short quick ones, it will transfer back into the bike. So it's definitely an aggressive ride setting for the most part, but if you're doing city riding, if you're doing highway riding, I personally would stick to the comfort settings. Hi, look, it's me. Hi, me. But we look pretty good to go that way. And then we're gonna get to the really, really bumpy streets on the hardest suspension setting because that makes perfect sense. As far as actual handling is concerned, it doesn't seem to affect the bike left and right too much, outside of the fact that on this one, it feels a lot more stable on the turn in. So as you're in the corner, it doesn't feel like it has a lot of give. Whereas on the really comfort setting, when you're in the turn, you actually feel the bike still kind of bouncing sideways a little bit, which it's not sliding back and forth, but it's a little bit uncomfortable to kind of feel that. It's not confidence inspiring. Whereas this is a lot more confidence inspiring in the sideways stuff. Whee! Yes, planted on acceleration, very planted in the standard setting. I like the standard setting for spirited rides a lot more. All right, let's put this thing in the stiffest settings.
And now it's time for sport settings. Top and bottom, twist them in all the way, 1.5 turns out. That is the sport setting for the rear. Preload, you adjust one time, don't touch it again. Unless you get heavier or something like that, in which case then, yeah, you might have to bump it up a little bit. Sport settings for the front, 1 turn out on each side. So tighten it all the way up, 1 turn out, each side.
All right, taking off here in the sport settings. Compliance isn't a thing. There's like no dive in the front. There is not really much give in the back. I can like blast onto the power and not feel it, which is good for sport riding, but not good for downtown riding, as you can hear. Why did I decide to go through the bumpiest part of downtown in the stiffest suspension setting? I don't have a clue. But I will tell you this, it does not squat on power. Yeah, I can give it all the beans and the bike literally just kind of just goes. It doesn't sit in the back at all, which is terrible because you want a little bit of compliance in the back for bumps and stuff, but under acceleration, great. Now we're outside of downtown at this beautiful little spot called Riverside, where I'm gonna hit this. Oh man, please, God. Somebody pull the stupid. I'm gonna turn here for no reason other than to show you guys this cool little spot, because why not? Lights turning yellow, that means speed up and go. Whee! Don't crash into this porch. Badoo, badoo. Look at that. Right here, right up on the river. Got the Sportster S. Freaking beautiful, man. Awesome day. Off we go to explore how stiff this bike is. Man, it really doesn't squat at all. Honestly, it has more of a feeling that the front's kind of lifting rather than the back's kind of giving. Oh my God, at 50 miles an hour, you feel everything. It's using none of the suspension. It only has 2 inches and it's using about 1/4 inch is literally what it feels like. There is not any give at all. But you can do stuff like this where you just turn real quick and it just whoop. All of these little ridges, terrible. All right, here we are back over these bricks, but in sport mode this time. The stiffest setting. And I don't know if you guys can hear that, but holy crap, sport mode has no give at all. Oh my God, this is terrible. Oh, yeah, that's terrible. Nobody should ride in sport settings.
So yeah, comfort mode on this bike is actually pretty soft. It uses all of the suspension travel. If you set your preload correctly, the bike will not bottom out, but it does use all of the travel. It's good for long rides, for when you're actually going to be in the saddle for an extended period of time. It is awesome, especially if you're going to be doing highway riding, that kind of stuff, and it's not overly comfortable sporty rides. I would definitely say dial this thing into the comfort setting. Now, as far as standard is concerned, that is pretty much the best of both worlds. Gives you a little bit of compliance, gives you a little bit of sportiness, to where when you take turns, you can actually feel the bike kind of sit nicely, hold its line, yet it's a little bit bumpy for longer rides and bumpier roads. So I would definitely do this if it's like twisties, kind of smooth, back roads, mountain roads, that kind of thing. The standard setting is best for that. Sport mode, just don't use it. It's too stiff. If your suspension's set up anywhere close to sport mode, more power to you. Just don't. Now, the way that I prefer to use this thing is actually kind of interesting. So it's a blend of sport mode and standard mode, where it's a little bit softer than standard mode and a little bit stiffer than comfort mode. For the front, in comfort mode, you're 3 turns out on both compression and rebound. And then on standard mode, you're no turns out on compression, 2 turns out on rebound. In the front, I actually do 2 turns out on both. Gives you a little bit of compliance, and it still gives you confidence in the turns. You can actually hold your line. It's not super bouncy. It's not actually like fully traveling unless you hit those big giant bumps. Now for the back, similar concept. On comfort mode, you're 2 3/4 out on the top, which is your compression, 3 turns out on the bottom, which is your rebound, and then you're 2 3/4 out in standard mode on compression, and then 1 3/4 out on the bottom and rebound. I actually go 2 3/4 at the top on compression, and I go 2 turns out on the bottom in rebound. And again, it's a little bit stiff. You could probably use a little bit less rebound and make it the full 3 turns out if you want a little bit more cushion in the back consistently. But as a lighter rider and being in Jacksonville, to where we don't have a bunch of like bumps and potholes, we do have decent roads here compared to major cities. I'm not too worried about how stiff it is. Yeah, those are my preferred settings. Feel free to use whatever you want to. Feel free to mess around with anything in between the factory settings. So anything between standard and sport, you change those settings. You're not gonna overly damage anything. Just kind of give them a click, half turn at a time, and find the settings that are best for you and what's most comfortable for you. If you guys do longer rides and have bumpier roads, closer to comfort would be best. If you have smooth rides and you wanna go fast and it's just a rip it around town type moment, go closer to sport mode. Thank you guys for watching. If you like this style of video with tips and tricks, comment below, let me know, and I'll make some more for you guys. Somebody's going fast. Also, if you enjoyed this video, I want to see some more Sportster S content, check out this video right here.